Welcome to SFL Honors. I'm Commissioner Cameron Irvine. The hype train has begun in the chat. Let's start tonight off with chat shoutouts. Hitman Holdorfs, Crazy H 2002, Cold 49, Butch Menor, Project X Crusade, Wiggy 9800, Axel Raven, Hammer Jammer, Sammy G, Kelgates Collections, Tyler Falk, Ray and Yola, Boomberry, Viking Wolf King 87, Rattler in the house, Phoenix Jones, Bo Martin Jr., plenty more. 50 bits from Ray. How's everything sounded on your end, folks? I did not vote. 100 bits from Collections, and we've reached the next level. Tonight, all the awards, all-star rosters, with the big game in 2 weeks. Reside with the 100 bits. Let's get it going. Tonight we begin with the biggest honor of all, the most valuable player. Nominees for MVP. Included Jack Wigmore, Phoenix Jones, Ezekiel Love, one second here while I track down my long list of nominees. Here we go. Tom Pepper, Jack Wigmore, Ezekiel Love, Mac Chima, Max Jackson, your MVP nominees. Pepper led the league in passing yards, second most passing touchdowns, third highest QBR. Jack Wigmore led the league in passing touchdowns by 4 over the next highest total, second in pass yards and quarterback efficiency. Ezekiel Love led the league in rushing yards and attempts, second in rushing touchdowns, second in yards per carry. Mac Chima led the league in receiving yards and touchdowns, and Max Jackson led the league in tackles and forced fumbles and had the second most interceptions. Not unprepared, Shaq. You know how the honors goes. We gotta keep people waiting a little bit. I got a lot on my screen. We'll be all right. 5 nominees, 1 winner. Your MVP with 55% of the vote. Second place got 18%. They are not Phoenix. Nobody knows but I. With 55% of the vote, Your season 17 most valuable player is Jack Wigmore, Baltimore Vultures. Jack Wigmore put together an impressive season this season, 4,484 yards en route to his second title, 40 passing touchdowns. That was number one in the SFL. Now to Offensive Player of the Year. Wigmore can't win it, but I'll tell you, 4 people that can. Tom Pepper, Ezekiel Love, Phoenix Jones, all mentioned in the previous most valuable player category. You are correct, Slyn. Wigmore's made a big difference in that organization. Wigmore concedes Offensive Player of the Year to the one and only Phoenix Jones, Mexico City Aztecs. Phoenix, the only player to amass 2,000 all-purpose yards this season, finished with 1,654 rushing yards, 15 rushing touchdowns, 350 receiving yards, and a receiving score as well. Caught 62 of 68 targets. Had 298 carries, which was third most in the SFL, 5.6 yards a carry, only trailing Baltimore's Jimmy Hazard, who had 170 less carries. How was the vote? Phoenix Jones wins with 36%. Ezekiel Love at 20%. Tom Pepper, by the way, was second place in MVP voting with that 18%. So now it's up to Defensive Player of the Year. Boy, this was a doozy. Your nominees, Saron Yates, the fourth of Baltimore, led the league in sacks by 7.5 over the next highest total. Defensive tackle from the Carolina Skyhawks, Phil Hall, led the league in tackles for loss by 5 over the next highest total. 23 non-sack tackles for loss. That was the most since E.K. Vincent's 25 in season 11. Alvin Mack, linebacker of Baltimore, led all non-DBs in interceptions. Actually set the record for interceptions by a linebacker in a season. 89 tackles, 2 forced fumbles, 9 passes defended, 7 tackles for loss for Mr. Mack. Giovanni Bolt, free safety of Baltimore. Not often you get 3 different players from the same team in one nomination. Bolt tied the single-season interception record with 15 and led the league by 4 over the next highest total. 85 tackles, 8 passes defended for Bolt. And Jackson, your lone defensive MVP nominee, led the league in tackles and forced fumbles, second most interceptions. Wigmore wins MVP. Jones wins Offensive Player of the Year. We're now on Defensive Player of the Year. We got 5 great ones. This, the closest vote of any category this year, separated by just 5 votes. Your defensive player of the season for season 17 goes to Sarah, and he hates the 4th. Baltimore Vultures. Saron, 19.5 tackles for loss, 34 tackles overall, 29 of those solo, 25 tackles for loss on the board for another champion. It's time for your special teams player of the year. Shark Tarkington, Otis Boudreau, and AJ Levy up for a nomination for the award. Oh, I stand corrected. A plot twist. This, the closest voting category. The winner separated by 4 votes. Eddie, when you get your own league, you can run your show however you want. Special Teams Player of the Year. Winner is Otis Boudreau, Louisiana Revolution. Boudreau made more field goals than anyone else this season without a miss. 26 for 26. Otis in his first season with Louisiana hasn't missed a kick in over a year. Now 80 for 83 all time. Next up, we got our rookies. Let's start on the offensive side of the ball. Your nominees were Houston quarterback Dave Burr, led all rookie quarterbacks in passing yards, passing touchdowns, and QBR. Running back Bailey O'Shaughnessy led all rookie running backs in rushing yards. Running back Jimmy Hazard led all rookie running backs in rushing touchdowns and yards per carry. He also led all rookie non-quarterbacks in total offense and touchdowns. And Mike Churchill led all rookie wide receivers and tight ends in receiving yards and touchdowns. Who's it going to be? The winner won by 9%. A rather comfortable margin. Got 40% of the vote. Your offensive rookie of the year is Too Cold 49 says the Duke. DR Sim 80 says the Iceberg. Lots of Houston representing. Bailey or Jimmy for me, says Stephen Black. Offensive Rookie of the Year goes to Baltimore's Jimmy Hazard. Hazard gets 40%. Dave Burr, second place with 31%. Jimmy Hazard turned it on towards the end of the season. 6 yards a carry, 8 rushing touchdowns, 774 yards. But he was not the focal point of the offense. He contributed in the receiving game too. 2 receiving touchdowns, 322 receiving yards, 6.6 yards per reception. Not bad. Hazard gets it done. Time for defense. Defensive Rookie of the Year nominees included Queen City cornerback Cody Griffin, led all rookies in picks. Houston strong safety Josh Rowe led all rookies in tackles and pass deflections. Defensive end John Lally led all rookies in sacks. Linebacker Derek Williams led all rookies in tackles for loss. Axel Raven says, Griffin, what say you in the chat? Astute observation, Hammer. Black says for him it has to be Cody. Griffin's getting a lot of support in the chat. Winner of the community vote took it with 40%. 7% better than second place. Your Defensive Rookie of the Year, or Season 17. Sometimes it's just easier to say year. Defensive Rookie of the Season goes to Cody Griffin, Queen City Corsairs. Cody Griffin balled out this season. Ten interceptions. That was tied for 4th in the SFL. That's the whole SFL, not just for rookies. 58 tackles, 43 of which were solo. 9 passes defended to go with his 10 interceptions. Had a tackle for loss, 183 interception return yards. That was second most in the SFL, period. Just trailing Jack Napier, and tops among defensive backs who did not have a pick 6 but had all those yards. Congrats to Cody. A phenomenal rookie season. That takes us to our moment of the year. Nominees for the moment include signings opening up on the new player portal. Tom Pepper breaking the SFL passing record opening week in overtime against DC. The 2021 Hall of Fame inductions at the convention. San Diego winning their first franchise game in an upset of Arizona, snapping a 16-game losing streak. Or was it London knocking off undefeated Baltimore to make their first playoff trip? Your moment of the season for season 17 is the Mavericks' first victory of the season and of franchise history.
Third down. Here is Vasquez, who floats across the top. Wide open receiver. 15, 10, 5, touchdown Mavericks. They strike over the top. A high-flying touchdown pass is going to extend the lead, and it's Liam Hammer, who may have just put the nail in the coffin.
Hammer has been having
that moment won by 7 votes over London's win over Baltimore. By the way, Josh Rowe finished second place for Defensive Rookie of the Year. Houston not used to coming in second place on Honors Night. They've done it now twice, with Burr getting second for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Now to your game of the season nominees, Week 1. London takes down Atlanta in dramatic 41-39 season opener. Week 3, Convention Saturday, 4 games, settled by 7 points or less. Week 12, 16 points scored in the final 2 minutes. A blocked extra point helps Lone Star beat Fort Worth. In the semis, Baltimore scores 10 points in the final minute over Mexico City to advance to the title game. Or was it the championship? Baltimore outlasting Florida for a season 17 win. This got 40% of the vote. Your game of the season.
He will throw Wigmore. Evasive action, checks it down to
no way.
Keys, and he's in. Touchdown, Baltimore. A TD for T-Roy, and with 42 seconds left, this game ain't over.
Baltimore's semi-final comeback against the Aztecs. Four awards left before All-Star picks. We start with the community ambassador. This was a write-in vote, so I can't tell you who all the nominees are. I can give huge shout-outs to Ashley Jackson, Dave Axis, Axel Raven, Eddie Gage, many others getting nominees, but there can only be one winner. Folks, she's done it again. Ashley Jackson is your community ambassador for season 17. Let's go to owner of the year, shall we? Owner of the year. Nominees. Included Arizona's Eddie Gage, Florida's Max Paul, Mexico City's Ramos Lynn, Atlanta's Mark Chisholm. And this vote was a rout, folks. Only bested by the MVP, where Wigmore took 55%, 53% of the vote went to this man. Your owner of the year. Is Eddie Gage, your owner of season 17 and back-to-back winner. Time to hit the field. Coaching staff of the year. This was a toughie. Nominees: Baltimore wins their second championship in 3 seasons, sets the record for point differential. Charleston, first playoff home game and victory in Predators era. Mexico City, the top rushing offense and the deepest playoff run they've had since season 11. Queen City, first playoff appearance for the franchise since season 14 and set the record for turnover differential. And Vancouver, best passing offense since season 11 and second in points per game. Not just head coaches on these teams, but excellent assistants and scouts putting in the work to help their franchises succeed. The coaching staff of the year with 42% of the vote. The next team getting 27%. Your coaching staff of season 17. Is the Baltimore Vultures. Tim Johnston, Thomas Paternitti, Jack Wigmore, and all who assisted. Your final award of the night comes to the hands of the front office. But first, a special shout out to our Make an Impact Award winners for outstanding effort on the broadcast team and stats teams. Without you, the season would not have been the same. This honor awarded to those who call the most games in a season, stat the most games in a season. That, my friends, is Justin Reside on the stats side and Josh Zirkle on the broadcast side. We'll have a special publication about those two gentlemen on our website tomorrow. Now to front office, and then your all-star teams. Front office nominees included Arizona, led by Ashley Jackson, DJ Moses, added Cliff Allen and Will Todd to the staff. Jacksonville, led by Mike All, completely rebuilt the team, led by the acquisition of the one and only Marcus Dunhill. London, led by Chad Rowland, added Johnny Pickler, Mike St. Green, and others for a successful rebuild that launched the Knights to the playoffs. Lone Star, led by Dave Axis, got top players on the market, including Jay Mart and Albert Begin, to begin a new era. And Louisiana, led by Ross Napoli, added Brian Craven, Otis Boudreau, who won Special Teams Player of the Year earlier tonight, Mike Ryan, and Doug Day as critical new pieces. Front office winner got 46% of the vote. Second place, 30. By the way, Max Paul, second place in owner vote with 19%. Queen City got second place in the coaching staff with 27%. Your front office of the year with 46% of the vote. Is the Arizona Scorpions, led by Ashley Jackson and DJ Moses. London, second place with 30% of the vote. Time for all-star rosters, folks. We're going to start with the visiting West side, visiting West team. We're going to break down all of the selections, what they did on the field. This is big time. Games in 2 weeks. First, the coaches on the West side. Your offensive coordinator is going to be Axel Raven. Your defensive coordinator is going to be Charles Doherty. They lead the West. Here's their squad. Your two quarterbacks, Tom Pepper and Dave Burr. Pepper, an MVP candidate. Burr, an Offensive Rookie of the Year candidate. Pepper first in passing yards and yards per attempt. Dave Burr is actually second in yards per attempt, fifth in passing touchdowns. Also worth noting that the Southwest and Pacific make up the Western Conference in the All-Star game. East, North, and Atlantic represent the Eastern Conference. Running back Ezekiel Love, Phoenix Jones. Fullback Ray Bentley. Wide receivers D.R. Sim, Kendra Hall, Brett Killian, Mason Kirby, and T.J. Punk, who is your designated punt and kick returner. Dan Daly, Jack Flash, Robert Garrett Jr., the tight ends. On the line, Mike Newtones of Vancouver, Gene Benazzi, Denver, Finley James, San Diego, Rylan Caudell of Lone Star, Sean Crooked, Arizona. Defensive side, that's Jeff Duffy, Fort Worth, Robert Braher, Portland, D.D. Sachs of Arizona, Des Troyer of Denver, Dan Tritz, Mexico City, Gerald Giudice of Vancouver. Linebackers, Gary Clem of Portland, Slyn Shady of Vegas, Brody Gulch of Houston. Inside, Joey Tropicana of Arizona, Mel Davis of Portland, Nick Fargo of Sioux Falls. Corners, Terrell Davis of Sioux Falls, Kyler Murray of Vancouver, Ethan Kai of Houston, Merrick Itera of Vegas. Safeties, Max Jackson and Drew Hamilton, the strong. Rochelle Colston and Tom Krieg, the free, of LA and Vegas respectively. Dustin McRack of Las Vegas is your punter. Cliff Allen of Arizona is your kicker. Overall, Vancouver tallies the most All-Stars out of the bunch with 8. Vegas 6, Arizona 5. Every team is represented. Let's go through some of these. On the running back side, Love and Jones are two top running backs. There was really no question there on the west side. Receivers a little down compared to the east. East stacking receivers. We'll get to that unit later, but DR Sim, Kendra Hall, Brett Killian, all with special seasons. Mason Kirby sneaks in there third in yards per reception. He was a big play threat down the field for Vegas. It's worth noting of this group, Brett Killian caught the most of his targets at 74.7%. Let's go to tight ends. Daly balled out this season. Third in receiving yards league-wide. Daly also top 7 in yards per reception, 6th actually. Third best reception to target percentage at 79%. By the way, Denver's Jeremy Mosley, 87.2% of his targets were completed. That was best among wide receivers or tight ends in the league, but Mosley couldn't grade high enough in any other category to get in. Neither could Mike Daggs, who caught 84.4% of his targets. That's second most. A stacked unit. Robert Garrett Jr., second overall in receptions. Jack Flash first in receiving touchdowns. Garrett Jr. was second in receiving yards too. Daly was third. Offensive line, huge shout out to Sean Crooked, helping keep Ashley Jackson upright. Jackson sacked just once out of every 29.4 of her passes. That was second best in the league. Mike Newtones helped to spring the number 1 passing offense in the SFL. Rylan Caudell keeping Lone Star's run game going. 5th best rushing offense belonged to Lone Star this season. Denver 5th in yards per carry landed Gene Bonazzi on the list. Let's go over to the defensive line. Jeff Duffy switching conferences, making it happen. Duffy 3rd in the league in sacks, quietly. 1st amongst defensive ends in tackles league-wide. Sack sneaks in. He was 2nd in sacks among defensive ends this season. Defensive tackles a little bit light in the Western Conference this season, but Dan Tritz, Des Troyer do enough. Troyer 5th overall in tackles. Tritz 5th in sacks. Judas Sessi sneaks in there thanks to some of his extracurriculars, forcing some turnovers, forcing a fumble, making some tackles for loss in the backfield. Again, weak group compared to the Eastern Conference, just stacked on the defensive line. Quite crazy. Linebackers, how about Gary Clem, quietly graded out higher than any other player. Clem number 1 in tackles for loss this season amongst linebackers. That goes underrated. Slyn Shady, Brody Goach also there. Inside, Joey Tropicana. What a beast in the pass defense game. Tied for first with Clint Hendershot and Mel Davis for pass deflections. Tropicana all over the field. That was enough to get him, and why not? Way at the top of the list. You see Davis in there too. Nick Fargo also in there. Fargo quietly 5th in tackles for loss this season, helping anchor that Sioux Falls defense. Cornerbacks, a very interesting unit. Terrell Davis, did you know that Sioux Falls gave up the least amount of explosive plays this season? That's plays over 40 yards. Terrell Davis helping that secondary out. Kept number 1 receivers shut down. Gave divisional opponents all sorts of problems. Kyler Murray, number 1 in the league in pass deflections. That leads everybody. Ethan Kai, Merrick Itera also in there. Safeties Max Jackson and Drew Hamilton. Max Jackson graded higher than any other secondary player. Jackson, number 1, of course, he was an MVP candidate. Number 1 in tackles amongst DBs. Number 3 in tackles for loss. Number 3 in interceptions. Yeah, that's going to do wonders for your all-star chances. Rochelle Colston, Tom Krieg in the slot. Big shout out to Tom Krieg. 4th among tackles for loss among all secondary players. And a lot of those guys, Doug Day, Nate Hall, Tom Krieg, they played in the slot, did a really nice job containing defenses. Slint Shady in the chat talking about his 7th All-Star game in 8th season. Just keep racking them up. Speaking of racking, Dustin McRack led all punters in the SFL with 8 punts inside the 20 this season. And Cliff Allen, a lot of great kickers in the Eastern Conference, but Cliff Allen, he tops the West, 26 of 28. Most field goals made in the conference. Lands him a spot. That's your Western Conference All-Star team. East is next. Teflon Ron. Have no fear. By the way, didn't hit Ray Bentley. Bentley is back, baby. Number 1 in all-purpose yards, led by over 100, 524. Also number 1 in all-purpose touchdowns. Bentley also helped Phoenix Jones to the 2nd highest yards per carry and was 3rd amongst fullbacks in yards per carry himself. So that's your Western Conference All-Stars. How about the East before we adjourn? Your Eastern Conference offensive coordinator is going to be Jack Wigmore. Defensive coordinator, none other than Jaden Swift of Tulsa and Madison, who's been balling defensively in the minors. With that, here's your Eastern Conference All-Stars. Your quarterbacks are Jack Wigmore and Bryant Dynasty of Baltimore and Atlanta, respectively. Running backs, Jet Zero of Queen City, Charlie Boletsky of Florida. Fullback is T-Roy Gaines. Wide receivers, Ivory Irvin, Mac Chima of Baltimore. Vin Calia and Mike St. Green of London. And Boo Chisholm of Atlanta. We'll get to that unit in a minute. Tight ends, Jack Wall for Jacksonville, Verdon Zarkoff of Florida, Garrison Blue for Louisiana. On the line, Olivia Bleeker and Brian French from Jacksonville, Joseph Wade and Greg McDonaldson from Florida, and Butch Menor at right guard for London. On the line, what a amazing line it is. Al Walker of Baltimore, Exodus O'Brien of D.C., Chris Andrews of Tulsa, Suron Yates IV won Defensive Player of the Year earlier tonight for Baltimore. Luther Gahn from Louisiana. Phil Hall of Carolina. Linebackers outside, Carson Miller, Tulsa. Jack Brown, Charleston. Alvin Mack, Baltimore. Inside, Clint Hendershot, D.C. Frank Smith, Baltimore. B.J. Loveless, happy birthday, B.J. You're an all-star of Queen City. Corners, Drew Riley of St. Louis. Corey Menor, the Menor brothers, making it happen for Charleston. Jack Napier of Atlanta. And Cody Griffin of Queen City. Apologize, Cody. I will fix that graphic. Nicholas Warner of St. Louis and Doug Day of Louisiana are your safeties. Free safety Giovanni Bolt is your designated kick and punt returner for the East. Mike Ryan of Louisiana gets another nod. Louisiana, just check their stats. Pretty great season for the Revolution. Marcus Agrippa, your punter from Florida, and Otis Boudreau of Louisiana, your special teams player of the year earlier tonight, will represent the East in the kicking game. All right, let's break down this Eastern Conference team. Quarterback's a three-headed race. It came down to efficiency versus inefficiency. We'll break it down. Bryant Dynasty, 4th in passing touchdowns, 5th in completion percentage, 4th in yards per attempt, best QBR in the SFL. He finished 4th in passing touchdowns despite having the 23rd most attempts. Just ridiculous. Now, Johnny Pickler, 3rd in passing yards, 3rd in passing touchdowns, but the inefficiency killing him in all other metrics to measure a great season. Bryant Dynasty's efficiency off the charts. He gets the 2nd spot with the MVP of Jack Wigmore. Your running backs well talked about from the honors ballot, but they did trail both Jones and Love. Not by much. Jet Zero and Charlie Boletsky tied in rushing touchdowns. Boletsky tops in the league in all-purpose touchdowns with 19. Zero and Boletsky are 3-4 in all-purpose yards behind Jones and Love. Boletsky 4th in yards per carry in the league as well. Now, this receiving unit, holy moly. Let's first start with Chima and Irvin. Chima was 1st in receiving yards. This is among all receivers. 2nd in yards per reception. Irvin, 2nd in receiving yards, tied for 1st in receiving touchdowns with Vin Callia, who's also on the team, 1st in receptions. Now let's move over to Vin Callia. 4th in receiving yards, tied for 1st in receiving touchdowns, 3rd in receptions. Callia also caught 70.2% of his targets. That's in the top 10. So did Chima, 71.6%. Irvin, 74%. Boo Chisholm, 2nd in the SFL. 78.2% of his passes he caught. Boo Chisholm finished 5th in receiving yards in the entire league. Finished tied for 4th in receiving touchdowns with Mike St. Green, who's on the list. Chisholm also 6th in receptions. I mean, these guys just racking up top 10 categories here. And then Mike St. Green, tied for 4th in receiving touchdowns, 2nd in receptions. St. Green caught 77.2% of his targets. That was 3rd best in the SFL. And let's talk about some other great players on the Eastern Conference side that didn't make it. Paul Dillevue, number 1 in receptions per target, 78.6% amongst receivers. Ultimately, Dillevue had the catches. He was 4th in receptions. Just didn't have enough metrics to get him through. If he was in the West, probably would have made it. So would have Eagle Mondavi, 10th in receiving yards. Mondavi also caught over 75% of his passes, 75.2%. St. Louis's efficiency numbers off the chart. Mondavi also 5th in receptions but falls short. Harish Prasad, Heath McDaniel Jr. of Carolina, both top 10 in receiving yards. Again, in a stacked Eastern Conference. Just couldn't crack the top 5. Tight ends, this is a talented group too. Jack Wall, Verret, and Zarkov. Wall graded out the highest. Number 1 in receptions. Number 1 in receiving yards. You just can't beat that. Wall also top 7 in receiving touchdowns. He finished tied for 5th with Mike Daggs. Wall caught 78.4% of his passes. That was 4th most. Verret and Zarkov tied for 2nd in receiving touchdowns. 5th in receiving yards. 4th in receptions. Zarkov caught 77% of his passes. That was 5th best in the SFL. On the line, this is a pass blocking team. Ron Cochran, best in the SFL, getting sacked only once per every 31.9 pass attempts. Matt Wilson was also tied with Ron Cochran, but Mexico City does not have any user offensive linemen. That's why you didn't see them on the board. That helps gets Wade and McDonaldson on the field. Jacksonville was pretty good too, though. 4th best passing offense, and Dunhill was kept upright. 1 sack per every 28.1 attempts. That was 4th best in the league. By the way, Carolina 5th in that metric without any star offensive linemen, which is just as impressive as what Mexico City was able to do. Butch Menner helped protect Johnny Pickler, 3rd best passing offense in the SFL. He slides into the right guard position. Let's move over to the defense. Defensive ends, pretty good. Walker, 1st in sacks. Duffy, 1st in tackles. Duffy's also 3rd in sacks in the SFL. Chris Andrews sneaks in, 4th in sacks, 4th in tackles for loss as well. He was a menace in the backfield. Now check out these defensive tackles. Suron Yates, of course, just won Defensive Player of the Year. Gond, 2nd most sacks in the SFL. Also 3rd most tackles for loss, tied with Cam Frosby, and was 4th in tackles. Then you've got Phil Hall, who had the most non-sack tackles for loss since season 11 when E.K. Vincent had 25. Hall had 23. That leaves Cam Frosby on the outside, even though Frosby led all defensive tackles in tackles. Was tied for 3rd in tackles for loss. When your conference is stacked, your conference is stacked. Linebackers, don't be sleeping on Carson Miller, y'all. Tied Gary Clem for the 2nd highest grade out. Miller 2nd in tackles for loss among linebackers, 7th in total tackles. Miller definitely belongs. Alvin Mack with all those picks. Jack Brown had a pick 6 this season. One of only 3 linebackers to score a touchdown, and the only linebacker to make the All-Star game who scored a touchdown this season. Buddy Blaze had 2, but a quiet statistical year for Buddy Blaze. Inside, B.J. Lovelace was a force, tied for 4th in pass deflections. Corners, really terrific pass defenses in the East. Charleston, Atlanta, St. Louis, and Queen City, all top 5 pass defenses that made the playoffs. St. Louis gave up the least explosive plays. That's plays of over 40 yards. Atlanta gave up the 2nd most, or 2nd least, rather. Charleston, 3rd. Queen City, Sioux Falls, 4th and 5th, or tied for 4th. All of them in the Eastern Conference. It was tough to get the football over the top in the East. Cody Griffin, obviously a beast. Jack Napier had a month to remember there in the middle of the season. Touchdowns and interceptions all over the place. You couldn't throw Corey Menner and Drew Riley's direction all season long. Safeties, Nicholas Warner gets in. Warner, the 4th highest graded secondary player. 4th in interceptions. He was top 12 in pass deflections as well. Was, of course, on that terrific St. Louis pass defense. How about Doug Day, okay? This is something, I can't believe Doug Day is leaving his defensive days behind him, because he had 9 tackles for loss this season. In the player progression era, that ties his own record. He got 9 a couple of seasons ago when he was in Lone Star. Mike Ryan, underrated season as well for Louisiana. Ryan 4th in pass deflections. Ryan also with 10 picks. Safety's definitely stronger in the West. But Mike Ryan makes it happen. Edging out Geralt Winkler of St. Louis. Zach Lay of Charleston. Kanye Rockefeller also close in the East. Marcus Agrippa of Florida. Otis Boudreau. Self-explanatory there for the Eastern Conference. That's your Eastern Conference All-Stars. And that is this season's presentation of SFL Honors. We hope you enjoyed it. Hope you all had a great night. I'm Commissioner Cameron Irvine. The All-Star Game's in 2 weeks. Saturday, December 18th. We'll see you there. Have all the breakdowns. We'll find out who steals this one. For all of us at the Simulation Football League, re-signings begin Monday. Free agency, Monday, December 13th. We can't wait to see where you land. Don't forget, we will be on the air for 6 straight hours, Monday, December 13th, for our free agency live extravaganza. You won't want to miss it. A first of its kind show here in the Simulation Football League. For all of us at the SFL presented by APM Music, I'm Cameron Irvine saying good night from headquarters.